Before we get into the main tutorial, I thought it'd be good to go over the basics of the block shadow tool that we will be using for the text effect tutorial. So if you are new to this tool, go ahead and either create an object or type a letter, preferably one similar to this that has some thickness to the actual letter itself. A good block letter will be good for our purposes, but to begin, just have your object or your letter selected, and then on the left hand side near the bottom above the transparency tool there will be a set of tools with a pull out menu, and we want this block shadow tool that's at the bottom of the list. And with your letter selected, you can just, or object selected or letter, just click and drag, and you can see kind of how your shadow will dynamically be drawn out from the center point. And you click on this box here you can adjust your shadow length, direction, position, all of that. You can even change the color right here in this drop down if you want. If you want a more precise shadow, you can come up to the top menu here and you have a bunch of settings for this tool once you've activated it, essentially. The first box here is the length of your shadow. You can click kind of in the middle between the two arrows to get this icon, and you can just scroll up, click and drag up and down to determine the length of it, or you can type in a specific length that you want, points, however long you want your shadow to be. And then to specify a more precise angle, this is going to be your second box up here. And if you notice, the direction of your shadow starts at 0 or 360 degrees to the right of your object and goes counterclockwise. So it would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 45, 90, 180, 270, 360. Then the next setting here is another way to change the color of your shadow, and you can change it to kind of whatever you like. Once you have that, you just X out of that. We'll just change this to negative 45 degrees and 0.5 for it. The next setting, I'm not really entirely sure. I've never had to use this button, so we'll just skip over that. The next button is your more or less trim button. So right now the way the shadow works is that this shadow object is both a combination of what you see in blue plus the green area of the letter, and we can see that if at this point with the shadow selected, if we hit either Control K on the keyboard, or if we right click on the shadow and click Break Shadow Apart, that will separate the shadow object from your original font or regular original object. And then you can just pull it over to the side and you can see the full object of the shadow object. If for whatever reason you didn't need that, this simplify button will trim out what you see in green from what you see in blue, the shadow object. So it's a dynamic button, so it doesn't take effect until you separate the object again. So if you turn that on and then hit Control K again to separate the object or break it apart and pull it off to the side, you can see that that green letter A has been trimmed out or subtracted from that entire shadow object. There are, depending on your purposes, you might have need of that. So we'll just undo back and uncheck that. The next button over, the remove holes, it'll take, when you turn that on, any holes, visible holes from between the shadow and the original object, it gets rid of that. So you can see the inner hole of the A, it just makes that blue one solid object behind there. The next setting, the last setting, is it adds a basically an outline width to your shadow. So if we bump that to 0.1, you can see it adds a shadow like outline width to the entire outline of the shadow object. We will be taking advantage of this function later. Another combination effect is using the simplify button in conjunction with the outline to get a different shadow effect. So if we turn that on, it trims out that outline width from the shadow. So if we bump that outline width up, you can see how much more like it just subtracts out. It pushes out the shadow even further from the original object. If you turn that off, you can see how it takes effect. So those are the basics of the Block Shadow Tool, and we will be taking advantage of this tool to create multiple different retro text effects. In this text effect tutorial, we are going to be recreating this retro striped text effect on the left here using the Block Shadow Tool to get our striped layers and get this look, this retro look that's a very popular retro text effect. So in order to do that, we are going to need a starting object or text. So go ahead and pick a word in a font that you like, preferably a kind of bulky script font like the one I'm using. Virtually any font will work, but yeah. So do that. Once you have that done, go ahead and select your word or object, and over in the left hand toolbar here, go ahead and select your Block Shadow Tool, and you can click and drag out your shadow to a length and direction you like, but for our purposes we want everything to be aligned and in the same direction and angle. So we are going to use our settings at the top. So we're going to start over, and based on how big my word is on my artboard right now, the 0.3 inch depth is a good depth for each layer of this look, and I want them at the negative 45 degrees so they go down and to the right. And I want to add an outline to get kind of this kind of thicker outline around the text itself. So I'm going to add a 0.1 inch outline to expand the shadow here. Once I have that done, I'm either going to right click, actually we got a little jaggy here, so there we go, we'll just go 0.1. Sometimes you might get little artifacts like that where your shadow doesn't fill in based on the font you have and the size of your outline or whatever. So play with the settings until it closes up, and just remember that that's your setting. Once you have the length of your shadow and outline set, you can either right click on the shadow and break apart, or you can just hit the Control K shortcut on the keyboard, deselect everything, and I want to change the color of this shadow from black to this brown, which I have my colors all set here. Here are the RGB values for each one if you want to use the same color scheme for yours. Otherwise you can pick any 4 colors you like or 5 colors you like. So I'm just going to click, either use the eyedrop tool to select the color from the little swatch and hover over and apply that color. Otherwise, if you don't know the shortcut to applying a fill color, you can select an object with a color fill you like, right click and drag until you hover over what you want to be colored that color or filled with that color, and you'll get a little crosshair icon once you are over the object you want to apply it to, and just release, and you can copy all the fill, the outline, or all the properties from this object. We just want the fill, so we'll just click fill. You can do that with any color you like. It's pretty simple, but we want the brown as our first color as to recreate this look. So now we are essentially going to repeat those steps 3 more times to get the rest of our striped layers, and we're going to do that from utilizing again the original object. So with that selected, go back to your block shadow tool, and this time we want to increase the depth by 0.3, so it would be 0.6 inches. And remember to add your shadow outline, so 0.1. Once you have that, hit Control K to break it apart and deselect everything, then select just your shadow and hit Shift page down to send it all the way to the back, and it'll be behind everything, and you can see how it's all aligned right now, going at the same angle, and the thickness of that layer, the visible thickness at least, is the same as the first one. So now we just want to apply our second color, which is this yellow. We'll do that. And now we'll get our third layer by doing the same process. Again, just increasing the 0.6 by another 0.3 inches, so 0.9 inches, 0.11 outline, hit Control K to separate, deselect, and then select just the shadow, and then shift page down to move it to the back, and add your next color. And then one more time. 1.2 inches plus the outline, and Control K, shift page down, and the last color applied. There. Now we have our four striped layers to give us that striped layered look. Now we want to apply this gradient to the topmost object, which is our original word. And I created this gradient using these colors, but the default gradient look in CorelDraw is this blended look, and that's not the look we're going for. The look we're going for is this one on the right that has hard edge steps between each color. In order to get that look, you take the standard gradient, and if you hit F11 on your keyboard, it'll bring up your edit fill dialog window, and this is where you can apply specific colors, but what we want is this acceleration setting here. By default it's at 0, which gives you this blended look. In order to get the hard edge steps, just take your slider and set it all the way to -100, and it gets rid of all of that blending, and it's just hard edged steps. And that gives you that look we need. So similar to, or once you have that done, similar to applying a solid fill color from these swatches here, you can do the same thing with a gradient. Just grab your right click and grab your swatch, hover over what you want to apply it to. In this case it's the word topmost object, release, and you'll get the same drop down menu, and we want to apply the copy the fill here, and that gives us our gradient on our original object. But that's not the final look we're going for. We want this look where the two middlemost layers are kind of compacted. So in order to do that, select your object if it wasn't already selected, and you can either click the interactive fill tool bar or tool on the toolbar on the left here, or you can just hit G for the shortcut. And what we want to do is click either, we'll start at the top here, click this kind of color node box at the top and hold down shift and just drag straight down. Do the same thing with this bottom node. Click and hold shift and drag up, and that'll compact your colors together. And because it'll compact those middle layers between the top and bottom colors. Now the last thing we want to do is just give it a little angle so it's not just straight across. And to do that, we have this little white ball handle on the left side here, and that will you can move it up and down to change the angle. We just want a slight angle. And the last thing is to readjust the position of these colors. So if you hover your cursor over kind of anywhere on these lines between the color boxes, you get a black crosshair. So once you have that, you can click and just drag the whole gradient around. So we'll just do some approximately like so. Once you have your last gradient on the text the way you like it, you are all done. You have successfully recreated this retro striped text effect.